Moncrief on News Talk.
Brought to you by Avant Money. Think you're getting the best value from your bank? Think again.
Hey, Doc, you better back up. We don't have enough road to get up to 88.
Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads.
Yes, a clip from Back to the Future, and where we're going, we actually won't be needing roads, because we may think that the concept of flying cars is a very far off one, but it may be happening a lot sooner than we thought. Hyundai's European chief, Michael Cole, has said this week that consumer cars that fly could be a reality by the year 2030. And just yesterday, a prototype flying car did a test flight between international airports. So will we all be zipping through the skies before we know it? Let's chat with motoring journalist Geraldine Herbert about this. Geraldine, how are you today?
Good morning, or good afternoon, Tom. I'm losing track of the days here.
This is your first day facing a human in some time, isn't it?
I know, it seems
in a
really
radio
strange.
studio with an actual presenter. Don't worry, it's as much of a unique thing for me as well. It's my second day. It's
But
still
we'll
very
get
bizarre.
there, Tom, and it's a good sign.
Yeah, it's a lot of getting
good.
used to. Seeing a human, there's a lot of getting used to around that. But this, this would have been on Tomorrow's World programmes in the 60s and 70s, and you would have scoffed. You would have thought it's one of those things they say is going to happen, but it's never really going to happen.
Yeah, it's one of those things we've been teased, particularly with films through, for God knows how long, from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang to even Harry Potter. Do you remember Ron Weasley drove the dad's car, the flying car, and I think it was the second one. So it's something that, as I said, we've been teased about. But actually, they've been around the concept for a very long time. In fact, the first flying car was patented in the States in 1917.
1917.
Yeah, and nobody realises that. And Henry Ford was obsessed with them because he had revolutionised the car and brought it to the masses. He thought, it can't be that hard to just then make that step and that leap to a flying plane.
On, let's break it to Henry gently. It can be that hard. Going on a road is one thing. Getting that entire mass off the ground and through the air, that's...
Yeah, I think what's proved really difficult is that the characteristics of both are so different. Like, the car needs 4 wheels for a very good reason. Planes need 3. Planes need wings. Wings are not good on a car. And this is the whole thing. So I think what we're really seeing more than anything is not so much flying cars as planes that can drive. So that's kind of a different thing. It's kind of a compromise there. And we are seeing a lot of the kind of drone technology. But I mean, as you said, there was that flight on yesterday, was actually a 35-minute flight between 2 airports. It has a BMW engine and it looks like a car, and it can transform into a car. This is the best in less than 3 minutes and drive off.
I have so many questions, I don't know where to begin. It's a BMW engine for a start. So is that a petrol or a diesel engine?
Petrol engine.
But we're in the world of electric. What are they doing?
Yeah, this is the thing. So this really isn't the future model, in the sense that the future model, if we look at what's supposed to be the great thing about flying cars, is they're supposed to save road space and save emissions and do all of that. So they will be electric. And what Hyundai are looking at is an electric car. And they did have this prototype at the Consumer Electronics Show in 2020. And I think it took 5 people. It went 290 kilometres per hour, and it could charge in about 5 or 6 minutes. Went 100 kilometres an hour. 100 kilometres was the range. So you're not looking at long distance, but that's the future.
Okay.
But I just think the fact that this flying car looks like a car. Like, it looks like a cross between a kind of jet fighter and a Ferrari, like the love child of the two of them, but it's a real proper car.
Right.
So, I mean, like that to me is the stuff of
how does it take off? Does it need a runway?
You see, this is the problem as well. This car actually does need a runway. So again, what we're looking at in terms of the future is saving on road space. So flying cars that need runways are not really ideal.
No.
So it's going to be more those kind of instant takeoff cars that we'll be looking at in the future. But again, I just think the fact that this is a car that drove to the airport, then literally turned into a plane and went off for 35 minutes is incredible.
It is incredible. I still have more questions, because I'm in my head trying to visualise it, and I'm thinking, is it kind of more of a helicopter? But it's not a helicopter. So the engine is it's forcing out some kind of force that's enough to get it off the ground.
And it has 4 wheels, so it's a
proper
car.
It's a piston engine, is it?
I'm not sure on that one. Now you're confusing me. No, it's...
Jets are all turbines. But a turbine, you couldn't get a turbine that small.
No, I don't think so. So yeah, I think you're right on that one. But yeah, so I mean, I just think the fact that it's a car engine, it looks like a car and it has 4 wheels and it can drive like a car in 3 minutes is just incredible.
Getting that off the ground, just the engine off the ground, I think is an achievement. Putting 2 people sitting either side of it, though.
Yeah, and it does take 2 people.
2 people.
Yes, that's not a family. We're not quite at the saloon car yet. But I mean, at the
Perfect.
same time, that's still it.
You don't have to bring the children.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
Sorry, we're flying kids.
I like everything about this. After 15 months living with them, I like everything about this. So, how long did it fly for?
35 minutes. But
Very
again,
impressive.
if you look at the Hyundai one that went for 100 kilometres, we're not looking like this is not about, going from Ireland to the rest of Europe. This is looking at going from, Cork to somewhere else or within cities even. This is very much, it's urban air mobility is what they're talking about. It's not long range.
Every time I think of this now, do you know what keeps going through my mind? Tony Fenton. This is a car Tony Fenton would have had before anybody else in Ireland. He would have been using it just to go to the shops.
Yeah.
And I would have been very impressed.
But you see, that's the other thing, that people have this idea that when there's flying cars, it'll be in their driveway and they can just go, do you know what, I'll go to the shops and I'll beat the traffic. But you couldn't have that if you think about it, Tom, because they'd have to be regulated. So airspace would have to be regulated. Then you have the problem as well, if you look at all the kind of the tips, the minor collisions that happen on the road, what would happen if minor collisions started happening in the air? They'd
wouldn't
have
like
a
that.
huge impact. So I mean, I don't think they're going to be sitting in your driveway going...
Right, there's a lot of bridges to cross. What kind of speed does it go at?
Well, that Hyundai goes at 290 kilometres an hour, and the Air car, the BMW one, went at 170.
That's very impressive. Once you're off the ground, the whole dynamic of everything changes, doesn't it? You just have to travel an awful lot faster. That for a road, that would be an incredible speed. And on top of that, you're not going down roads or around corners or being held up by... So that's 170 kilometres. You just go.
Just straight there. No
That's
congestion,
great.
no nothing. Until they become popular, and then what happens, you see?
Then you've congestion and traffic lights and you're just held up in a different spot. That's all that's changed, really. You're off the ground
Yeah,
being
it's
held
just,
up.
you're in the clouds rather than on the road, yeah.
So this was really kind of proof of concept. But how close to reality could it be?
I think myself this is going to go down the same route as self-driving cars, which is that they're going to be way too expensive for personal use. It's just not going to happen. So I think what we're looking at is there's Uber have teamed up with both Hyundai and Toyota to create these kind of air taxis. So I think that's probably where we're looking at, is this idea that they will literally, but again, it'll be for the rich rather than for, your ordinary Joe Soap who can afford, because God knows how much they'll cost for a short journey. But I can see that's where they're going, is in terms of this kind of taxi thing. I don't for a second think they're going to be personal transport in the sense of how you own your car and use
Okay.
it.
And are there lots of companies involved in trying to develop it? Or is this the only company or are there others?
No, there's about 200 across the world. Now, they're all developing anything from these tiny little drones to these actually 5-seater planes that drive, or cars that fly, so that there's a lot of things are being called flying cars, but there's quite big differences between them. But there's a huge amount of companies and there's a huge amount of investment and kind of buzz around it in the States as well. Like, everybody wants to be the next Tesla in the air.
Yeah.
So there is lots of investment in it, very similar to the sort of buzz we saw about self-driving cars. That's sort of slowed down after the pandemic because there's just not that sort of money to invest at the moment. So I think we're going to hear a lot about it over the next while. But again, as I said, having it sitting in your driveway and just taking it to the supermarket, not going to happen anytime soon, Tom.
Right. I'm thinking back to Celtic Tiger days when it was helicopters going to the Galway races. It'd be flying cars.
It'd be the flying car, yeah.
That'd be very impressive all the same. Why are we building new roads? All this space will be wasted once this comes in. It's not going to come in that fast, Cormac.
Yeah, yeah.
I wouldn't. We have helicopters and planes. Why do we need a flying car? Well, if it did work, if there was a workable, it would be sensational, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's supposed to fill that kind of gap that doesn't happen at the moment. We take planes for long journeys, we take helicopters for slightly shorter journeys, but this would be really short journeys that would kind of like just literally hop from one point in a city to another. That's what the idea is, to just free up the roads. But I don't know if that's what they're actually going to do. I would honestly see them as more, as I said, this kind of plaything of the rich more than anything, and these air taxis more than anything else. I said, the idea of I'm going in to buy a self-driving car and then my self-driving plane, it's just...
In my head, I'm trying to work out now who would actually have them, which Irish people would actually drive them. I can think of a few contenders there. A very obvious question, not to spoil the fun, but how the hell are we going to regulate this? Presumably they'd need some sort of air traffic control system that stops off flying into each other. That seems like that would be a huge issue.
I think this is going to be the biggest problem. This is what I was saying to you about these tips that happen on the road. Can you imagine if they start happening in the sky?
Yeah.
Like, you can't have that. So you couldn't have a free-for-all where people could just, as I said, decide to go to the supermarket on a whim. It would have to be tightly regulated. They'd have to fit in with all of the planes that currently coexist in the sky. So I think that would be a huge problem. And actually the sheer point of having to regulate them would suddenly take that, travel on demand away. So almost the whole point of them would be lost.
They probably wouldn't be at the same altitude as commercial flights. They're probably an awful lot lower. I wouldn't say they're that high off. Are they high off the ground?
No, they're not that high, and they wouldn't be as high. But at the same time, you'd still have to regulate it all in the same space. And as I said, like, what would happen if they had a tip? Like, if you have a tip on the road, the worst you're going to get is do a
Pull
couple
over.
of thousand damage to your
Yeah.
car. But I mean, if that shot a plane out of the sky and it ended up on a house, or there's
Right.
all sorts of things. So insurance, you can imagine insurance companies going,
and then
no,
on
no,
top
no.
of that, if there are many cars up there regulating, now that would be a traffic light system.
Yeah.
You would have to come up with some sort of way of regulating
Exactly. So
and
can you imagine
crossing
that?
lanes.
So you'd be swapping congestion on the road for congestion in the sky. See, these
Yes.
these are not good things.
There is another question, and I mentioned electrical, and Sinead Narklow saying, what about the impact on the environment? If it's diesel or electric, that's not good. But would it be better or worse in terms of carbon output?
No, you see, the thing is, that's why Hyundai are looking at this electric solution. So it'd be sort of an electric solution to congestion on the road by providing in the sky. But that's why this BMW engined air car is just a gimmick in the sense of it shows it can be done, but that's not the way of the future.
Right.
But it's just still incredible that you have a car that can drive and then it
Yeah.
can fly and then it can drive again.
The optimist inside me is thinking that when mobile phones came out, they were like bricks, and then once they became hugely popular, they went down in price, and the battery life went through the roof. Is there no chance of that with these?
I don't think so, because I think that's the way electric cars are going, which is great. But these are a whole different concept. And again, keep going back to the self-driving cars. They're just going to be so expensive to produce that I just don't see them as being something for the mainstream. I don't see electric. People have this idea of self-driving cars. They're going to have them in the driveway and they're going to say, take me to whatever, and that's going to happen. It's not, because the whole point of self-driving cars is that most cars sit for 23 hours a day. They only get used for an hour. So the whole point of a self-driving car is it'll be ticking away all the time. So that in itself will reduce the number of cars on the road and the number that's needed. So by the same token, I can't see these as being anything other than that. So
All right. There's another question as well, which I hadn't thought of. Mick saying security issues, terrorism wouldn't be great, would it?
in what sense? That they could be
You
hacked or
could
they could be
load
taken
it
over?
up. If
or...
you have one of them, then you
Yeah.
literally have a flying bomb.
But I mean, you have that with a plane, and we've seen that before. You can use anything to good or bad. So I'm not sure it'd be any worse than
Easier
than
to
what
get their
you-
hands on that, I think.
Possibly, yeah.
And then imagine a load of idiots with provisional licenses driving
Murders in the
these
sky, God forbid. No, as I said, I don't see that happening.
Well, I have to say, you have to have your mother with you when you're driving. That's definitely going to take the crack out of it, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. Just the glamour is gone.
I have to say, this has gone from being a really exciting idea to
A minefield
an absolute
of
drag.
problems. Yeah. That's what happens with most good ideas.
I am not getting into one of them. And look at the other people who drive them, honestly.
But that's the other thing, you tell, it's hard enough trying to navigate the roads at the moment in a car. Can you imagine trying to do it in the sky? So, it'd be an interesting idea.
For those of us
all
who
right.
have, spatial awareness issues.
But there would be a totally different driving test. Remember, it'd be a flying test, and it would be, so there'd be other challenges you'd have to overcome.
At the moment, one of the things that people get failed for most in their driving test is not checking their mirrors enough.
Yeah, that'd be fairly lethal in flying. But anyway.
It's one thing checking behind you, but above you and beneath you. I'm definitely on the... Who had this mad idea?
You're so not doing it
Yeah,
anymore.
this is
Tom.
absolutely not going to happen in this lifetime. Before that, you go, I see you driving really beautiful cars all the time, but I can't get over how many of the cars you're driving are still top-end diesel and petrol engines. Like, is it not starting to accelerate the whole move towards electrical?
It is definitely, Tom. There's no doubt about that. But if you look at the sales, I think it's 36% are petrol and about 38% are diesel. So there's still, the lion's share is still petrol
Yeah.
and diesel. That said, 1 in 3 buyers going into a dealership now are not opting for petrol and diesel. They're going hybrid, plug-in hybrid or electric. So that's where the market is going. But the other thing is, if you look at all of the new cars that are coming in, the new makes and models, they're practically all electric. I did an A to Z recently of literally everything that was coming in between now and Christmas, and I'd say you could count on one hand the amount of petrol and diesel that were coming in.
All right.
It's all electric. So you're going to see a huge shift in the next few years.
The tipping point is what we're all looking forward to, that moment when you just start to see so many of them. You can't
That
believe it. Do you think,
won't-
how close is that?
That won't come until you can walk into a dealership and the petrol, diesel and the electric model are all priced the same. At the moment, electric cars are still that bit more expensive than their equivalent petrol and diesel. But that tipping point is likely to come in about 2 to 3 years, and it's all to do with the battery price.
Right.
Once that comes down, and then if you look at Oslo and Norway, where they have actually created that artificially through taxes, 70% of new cars are electric. Exactly the same thing is going to happen in the next 2 to 3 years. I know people go, what? But it is. It's on the way.
2 to 3 years is nothing.
No, nothing at
For
all.
people going out to buy a new car now, that's...
We'll be trading in at that point. Yeah, absolutely.
amazing stuff. Fascinating insight into the future, Geraldine.
Even if it wasn't quite the future we started off with.
No. Scary, really. Geraldine, thank you very much indeed, Geraldine Herbert there. Listen to Moncrief on Newstalk 106 to 108. Coming up, the dissolvable pacemaker.
Moncrief on Newstalk.
Brought to you by Avant Money. Think you're getting the best value from your bank? Think again.